So as I assume you know, you're here to talk about starting a Ruby internship, and depending on like where you come from in terms of like what brought you here, we're going to kind of explore that a little bit. To set some healthy expectations, it's going to be tough to go through every aspect of starting an internship. The goal, however, is to tackle some of the biggest chunks that we have identified over our time, which we'll talk about in a little bit. However, it's super important as a workshop that we also are good participators. So here's ducks, okay? 2 things. For every participation, you can have a duck. They come in different flavors and flares, so just be aware of that. And also, let's make sure that we're really focused on our participation. So I'm going to ask you to please close your eyes for a minute, and I'm going to put you through a little bit of a planned process. So I'd like you to close your eyes and imagine yourself waking up in the day. It's a beautiful day. And you see out the window a slight hint of light. A hint, I call it. So you go towards the window, thrust open the shades, and there it is, the sunshine. Yes, off in a distance, a hill you've walked up many a time. So you rush, not forgetting to put on your pants first, out to the front door. Out the front door you go, into that fair little field where off in the distance you see the sunrise. Yes. You crest over the top of said sunrise, or toward said sunrise and said hill, and in a distance you see an animal. Yes, an animal. Now some of you might be thinking this could be my spirit animal, but no, it is not that. It is not your spirit animal. So you close your eyes. Well, you're already closing them now. It's very meta. And you start to hear a sound coming out of this animal. I would like you now to make that sound. Good, this is good. Now make the sound louder. Even louder, very good. Make the sound louder. Feel the sound. Feel the sound, good. Give the sound different tones, good. This is excellent. This is glorious. Very, very good. Don't shake your head. Know that this is a source of truth in your life. This is where you find yourself. This, my friends, now embody it. Step into the sound. Step into the sound. That's right, now you are this animal. Now again, you might wonder, what is this animal that I'm guiding you towards? What is this? This is your confusion support animal. At any point in time, if you feel confusion, make the sound of your animal and it will bring you to a state of glory. It will bring you to a state of understanding, maybe. But this is your confusion support animal. Now, raise your hand if you know what your confusion support animal is. Okay, do we need to go deeper down this path for 2 of us? No? Okay. Raise your hand if you know what your confusion support animal is. Okay, now here's all I ask. Whenever you have a suggestion, all you have to do is raise your hand because you have your confusion support animal. Yes? Okay, very good. All right, give yourself a round of applause for having your confusion support animal now. All right, very good. So, like I said, for participation, you can have one of these stylish ducks. So if you ever feel like you need to pair alone, now you're never alone. Not only do you have your confusion support animal, but you can also have a duck. All right, awesome. Well, here's the deal. All kidding aside. So internships are near and dear to us, and I would imagine that something brought you here. So let me ask the simple question. What is the biggest reason why either you haven't started one, or are struggling to run one, or run it really well? Never have historically run one with the team? Okay, great. What else? Not done one yet? Yes?
Not trying to get support from the company.
Getting support from the company is challenging, totally. What else? Same thing, getting support from the company and management and leadership, I'm gathering. Yeah, okay.
Don't feel confident in the ability to mentor them.
Confidence around mentorship, absolutely. What else? Anything else?
My team feel a little fear about failing that person in that first call.
So as senior mentors feeling worried about feeling failure around that. Yeah, great.
I'm not working here at the time, so.
Yeah, right. Okay, very good. Yeah, okay. So these are super common, all of the things you're saying are super common reasons. And as a community, we, especially at conferences, are here to support one another, so it's very apropos that we're here talking about internships, because When I was at RailsConf this last year in Portland, there were two boards. Board number one on the left-hand side, oh, I forgot to move my slides. Board number one on the left-hand side was a full-size whiteboard that literally had items falling off of the side for senior positions. To its left was a whole nother board that had been split into thirds, and on the far left side was early career positions. There were 7 items on it, one of which said, look at the other board. Now, if you've ever been to a conference before, many of them start the same way, where we say, raise your hand if you're new to the community. And almost always, a good portion of that audience raises their hand. So it's a little bit in conflict, right? You have a community that says we're here to support, yet at the same time, many of the companies we work for aren't set up to support them either. So it's really incumbent upon us to help create change there. And all of the reasons you said are 100% legitimate, and I just want to call that out, okay? Now here's something we never hear. We never hear this. We never hear we don't care. It's never that reason. Now some people may behave like they don't care, but I actually think that's a little different than actually not caring about this audience. Here's why I think that's the case, and it's because that for most of us, all of us actually, all started from that same place of knowing nothing and not knowing what to do with it. And so we went through our own journey. So again, it's not that we don't care, it's just hard for us to remember that time and think that there might actually be a solution for it, okay? Now here's the thing that I love about the Ruby community and why I'm excited to be here helping walk through this workshop and start this process is because I think Andy and I were just talking about this during lunch, that of the various technical communities, the Ruby community and the Rails community is some of the most supportive groupings of people. And I think it comes from truly the top down, from Minnie Swan and all of that kind of belief in support and desire to help. So again, this is not something we ever hear, especially on the internship side. This is not true. I think we do care because that's what we do. We do care. So we're going to talk about how we can get to that point where we can support one another and support junior people getting through it too. All right. I want to introduce, so we're all a part of the same company, Learn Academy. And Chelsea is our CEO and founder, and I want to introduce something to give some credibility behind why we would talk about this. Not to pitch it by any means, but just really talk about that we're not just, these aren't a bunch of hypothetical opinions. Like, we've actually done this a whole lot of times before. So, Chelsea.
All right, cool. Thanks, everybody. So like Adam said, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Learn Academy. We were founded in January of 2015, and at that point, we were one of the only boot camps in Southern California. And still today, we are one of the only boot camps in the world that offer an internship as an integrated part of our curriculum. And so the reason why we do that is because we know that the internship is the thing that's going to solidify all of the skills, that they're getting hands-on experience, they're hearing over and over again the things that they learned in the classroom, but more importantly, they're seeing all of you. They get to see you in action, and all of a sudden everything starts to click in the things that they heard. So we've been setting students up for success in that way for a long time. Our program is a 16-week program. We do 12 weeks in the classroom. We solidify those skills, give them those basics, and then we do that 4-week internship with a company. So today we've graduated over 500 students. We've done over 200 internship programs with 100 different companies, and we've worked with companies of all different sizes. We've worked with startups that have the single engineer that is there. We've worked with companies that have hundreds of employees and multi-level development teams there and helped integrate internship programs into that. Next year, we're going to grow even more. We are about to, we're starting a partnership with the VA, where 65% of our students are going to be vets transitioning into tech and into this Ruby community. And with that, so we're going to graduate over 200 students next year, do 100 different internship programs with several different companies. But before any of that happened, so we were founded in 2015, January 2015. In 2014, RubyConf was in San Diego. And at that point, we were in the very beginning stages of everything. We had our curriculum, we were gathering students, and all of a sudden we were like, okay, we need to gather our partners. We need to find the companies that want to help us grow these students and this network. And so we went to RubyConf, we sat around a table, much like the ones in the other room there, and said, hey, who wants interns? The entire table raised their hands. And some of those partners are still partners with us today that have gone around. And that just goes back to what Adam said, is that this community time and time again has shown that they want to care. And why being here today means so much to me that now I've spent the last 8 years diving into this, that now I get to give back to all of you and say, okay, let me help you do the things that you want to do in your companies and continue to help people grow in their career, because that's what we care about. So what we did was that we took the internship and we broke it down into 4 parts. So we have our pre-planning, our preparation, our executing, and our getting support. And some of the things that we've noticed over the time is that a lot of times the biggest hurdles are these first 2 sections, that a lot of our companies that we work with for the first time, they jump right into that first day. They're like, yeah, we want interns, interns show up, and they're like, okay. Now they find all the stumbling blocks, right? So as we know as engineers, that maybe prep and planning is a really important part of our process and can make and break a project. So we want to spend some time kind of going over those different pieces today, and we're really going to spend most of our time in this workshop in these first 2 to kind of help you so that you get an idea of like what you can do to just get started. So let's jump into the pre-planning hurdles. This pre-planning, sorry, I keep stepping backwards. The pre-planning is really, and I think a few of you mentioned it, is your pitch to leadership. This is where you're going to come up with our goals, our measurables, and our logistics. And those are the things that your leadership really wants to hear from you. But we need to draft those out so that you can come to them with, say, here's the plan, here's what we can do, and here's how it aligns with your goals as the leadership also. So let's dive into that first and go into the first step of that, which is talking about your goals. What is it that you want to do? What is your why? So I'm going to turn it around to you and start asking you, why do you want to do an internship? What do you want to get out of it in the end? First answer gets a duck. Andy.
Yeah, it's going to develop my senior engineers. So
Yep.
I have a very small team. There's only a couple of senior engineers and me, and I think it will be tremendously good for them to have to explain themselves to someone more junior.
Yep, for sure. Leveling up.
You get a duck. Look at that. All right, everybody celebrate that Andy just got a duck. Yes, very good. Boo. Yeah.
And
What else?
you had your hand up, right?
Here, okay.
It's multi-factor, just like Andy was saying. Like, I want to develop a pipeline of talent for our organization, people who have already experience in our systems, but also just I want to generally increase that pipeline of technology in the industry of young people, early career people making that jump from boot camp to first job, because that's the hardest jump in the whole industry. And so making that a smoother ramp is important to me.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. So if you haven't, you have something to write down. So this is a workshop. So if you need to create a hypothetical scenario for yourself, I encourage you to write down right now what would be a why related to either something you want to start, already have in plans, or for the sake of actually getting it into your body, because this isn't just a talk. So write that down, please. Anyone else have an idea for what their why would be? Yeah, Cameron, go ahead.
So mine's a bit selfish, but I enjoy mentoring. So
Mentoring.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So give back. Great.
Yeah, bottom line, trying to get some work done, get some developers, and it's difficult to find developers, and maybe to bring them up into the way that we work.
So it sounds like there's two causes. One is the talent pipeline cause,
Right.
bring more people in, and the second is actually to actually make some product
Right.
grow. Yeah, product stuff.
And in your system too, which.
Yeah.
Yeah, in your system. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think there's.
it's okay.
I think there's three elements for us. Sort of reiterating what's been said already, there's the opportunities for senior engineers to mentor people to help grow themselves. There's the selfishness of being able to kind of create our own pipeline of staff for the future. But something that has been really appealing is we've actually hired, I've hired in the past 3 people that have came from boot camps, and it's increased our diversity within our group. And so from that perspective, like, better for worse, a lot of senior talent tends to be white CIS males. And it's not like the main intention, but it's a nice side effect of trying to, how can we broaden the talent pool so it's not just that segment of people. And so that's kind of a third angle to it.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Cool. Do any of you feel like the goals that you have don't align with the goals of your organization?
I think that's a yes. Yeah.
Is there ways to find, like, where can you find, if we're going to use this as part of your pitch, but also like establishing those goals are then going to help us in our next steps of measurable? Yeah.
I think the biggest pushback that I've seen is you're going to slow people down. If you take on new devs,
Yeah.
it's going to drag people down.
Right.
And that's like off the top of my head, that's the biggest pushback.
Yeah, big
Yeah.
worry of slowing folks down.
Yeah,
Better,
and
yeah.
we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Sarah's going to go through some of the in the execution part of it. But if it is taking too much of your time, then something is broken and it's not working. The internship is not working. It shouldn't take all of your time. And so I think there's ways that we can, tips and tools that we can use to kind of help with that, for sure. Does anyone still not know, like, what their goal might be?
Real quick, you get a duck.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, and you get a duck. And Cameron, you get a duck. And John, you get a duck. You're still working on your ducks in the back. Yeah.
Don't
I
worry.
can throw that far.
There's plenty of ducks.
There's so many ducks.
Okay, so just to share, and I love this because you guys kind of echoed, these are the biggest goals that we hear when we're working with companies. The pipeline of talent is a big one, especially when we are talking about the diversity angle of it, that you really can use this to diversify your dev team. The employee retention, which is, I think, a little bit of what you were talking about, Andy. I think it plays into that a lot, that sense of mentorship and ownership over the growth of somebody else is so inspiring that causes folks to want to stay longer. And then identifying holes in onboarding is another goal that has helped a lot of our companies. Mentorships, and of course, giving back to the Ruby community. Great. So does everyone feel like they have like at least a goal that we can kind of work off of? Yeah, okay, great. So the next part of the pitch, so we have our goals, and then the next thing we want to talk about is our measurables. So for us, because we're in the education sphere, the thing that we work in is learning objectives. We spend a lot of time saying, okay, this week, what is the single thing that our students need to take away from? And we do that from the very first day until the end of their internship. And so we've spent a lot of time really thinking about and breaking down these goals. And there are a lot of systems out there to help you build learning objectives. Really what a learning objective is just setting expectations. And so it's a matter of setting expectations with your organization so that you're on the same page with that goal, and understanding that, like, here's the goal, and this is how we're going to measure and track it throughout the time that people are here so that you can clearly lay out the plan to get there. So you need to think through these things, and you need to start with that goal and then move into the learning objectives or expectations outcomes. Now, the thing that we want to do today, which I think folks are mostly familiar with, is, can anyone tell me what a SMART goal is? Yeah.
SMART?
Yeah. Specific, measurable, actionable, time-bound, I forget the R part.
Ruby.
And time bound.
Yep, time bound. Yeah, so specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-based. And so we can use that as a framework to create some of these goals. And it's important to think of them in two different buckets. So you want to come up with the SMART goals for your organization. What is it? If it's a hiring pipeline, we want to be very specific in that we want to be able to hire 2 people in the next 4 months through this program, that you come up with these very specific goals. The other thing to think about, and I'm going to pull Sarah into this, we are creating the learning objectives for your interns also. So you can start thinking about this before they come in. It's also something that you can do with them. But one of the biggest things we hear from our interns is they don't know when they are succeeding. And they get so stressed that they're like, oh my gosh, there's so much to do. And so much, and you as the manager oftentimes are like, man, they're doing great, but they don't know that and they don't feel it. And a lot of that has to do with not setting these expectations in the beginning. So you want to start from the very beginning of like setting what these goals might be. So I'm gonna ask Sarah, we're gonna do one together, and then I'm gonna ask you to write 1 or 2 SMART goals for your interns that might start based off of what it is that you want them to be doing. So Sarah is our Director of Academic Experience at Learn. She also manages our internal internship program, so we build internal apps to support our ecosystem. And she's been managing that program and managing our interns and does an amazing job. So she has some really great examples of some of the SMART goals that she gives to her students. And we were talking earlier about what is the overarching goal for a very SMART goal for your interns.
So for my interns, the biggest goal that I set for them is contribution to the project. Particularly for our project, if the goal is like feature contribution, and getting a certain number of commits, getting your name, your GitHub attached to the repository so that you are a contributor on this code base is something that is very easy to measure, and that it helps create camaraderie in my internship team, because we want to make sure that everyone's contributing. So you don't get the one person who's making all the commits and everyone else gets left behind. And so not only is that something that's really, really easy to measure, you can do it week by week depending on your stories and your project, but that also it's such a sense of ownership that you are really proud that your name is attached to this you're a contributor of a repository.
Great. So why don't we do this in pairs or people groups or whatever, so you guys can kind of work off of each other. But I want you to kind of come together and think about what would be a good SMART goal for the first week of an internship. And then what is a good SMART goal for the entirety of the internship? What is it that you think they could do by the end of it? So let's come up with those 2, and we can walk around and help. But if you guys want to kind of gather together and put your brains together, maybe do a group of 3 or 4, whatever you guys want to do. And we'll give out more ducks.
Yeah, everyone gets a duck.
Everyone gets ducks.
There's so many ducks.
I'm just saying I got the first goal.
All right, good. How is everyone feeling about their learning objectives? Yeah, SMART goals. Anyone want to share? Anyone want a new duck?
Drew, do you want a duck? Drew.
Andy and I talked a little bit about whether getting your developer environment and computer set up would make for a good one, because I know that was a challenge for me. My very first job was I had a very configured computer for my boot camp, and then work gave me one, and I went, I don't actually remember how I did any of this.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. You get to pick your duck now.
Take the owl and the amp.
I was so gonna do that one too. Drew gets a duck. Dun, 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 dun. Anyone else have that same? I know you guys did a very similar thing, like onboarding, getting started, sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah. Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, I think onboarding is special. Anyone have any? Did you get to talk about the full picture? Any goals for that? Yeah.
We were talking about having onboarding the next intern as a goal.
Yep.
It's just when you're no longer the intern.
Yep. Sarah and I will give
Oh.
ourselves eyes because we do that with our interns all the time. We're like, great,
So onboarding
it's
the
your
next
turn.
intern. Yeah.
Because this goes back to the mentorship is then they become the mentors, and that means a lot to them. So I'm a big fan.
And less work for everyone else on the team.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely
sure.
less work.
What about anything for you guys? Anything to add?
Document that.
So take more of a mentorship approach to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
block out some time to say, this is how I look at an app when it's new to me, and it might help you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. So now we've talked about our goals, we've talked about measurables, and I think that measurables are something that you can really fill out, that those are the things that are really going to speak to your leadership, is that if you can go in and say, great, here's your goal, if it's hiring, if it's diversity, whatever it is, that you can then map out what those goals are. So the last part is logistics, and
Can I actually say something real quick about
No.
please, can I please?
Yeah.
Because it came up about, when we were talking about the organizational goals, it's pretty important that you work to make sure that is aligned to what the actual organization values. Because when those are out of sync, it can die before it even starts. So it's not necessarily what your goal is as much as how does this fit into the organizational spectrum of things. So this is where like a hiring target fits in. The other thing that I have seen that's missed, or at least glossed over, is getting specific. So not hire people, that's not specific. Hiring 2 people by X date is, and this is where that SMART model really helps out. Because what you can do with that is you can then take it in and say, okay, let's work this plan backwards to see if it's actually a cost benefit. So if we have a 3-month paid internship or a 1-month unpaid internship and we get 2 candidates out of it, our headhunting or recruiting fees are X, we no longer have that. So if it costs us half that amount of money to run the internship, we can basically interview them for a month or 3 months, pay them, and then hire the ones that work out, and we can rinse and repeat.
It's that whole thing,
Yeah, here's a number for you that adds to this cause, which is 70.4% of interns will later work for the company that they interned with. So adding on top of it is, in a market and in an industry where sourcing, interviewing, and so forth can be tough, it's a great vehicle because we're talking about a group of people that are oftentimes quite grateful to have the opportunity to be in a position to be able to be mentored and work with you. So that establishes something really well. And then on top of it, then when you get to the end, it's like you had a great opportunity to understand kind of the behavioral traits, their kind of cultural addition and how they're going to bring into the team, like all of that stuff. So yes, you got basically an extended interview in the process, which is pretty sweet.
yeah, that's great. Cool. So we've done our goals, measurables. Now we're going to move into some of the logistics, and we're only going to cover a couple of the big ones that we've tackled. We're going to talk about the time, how long. We're going to talk about management of the interns. So I'm going to start with how long the program is. So our internship at Learn is 4 weeks. And we've learned a lot in that process, but we've also worked with companies to implement 12 weeks programs as well. And there's benefits to both of them, and that you can achieve different things depending on what you want to put into it. So, or what you want to get out of it. So with a 4-week program, what you can get out of a 4-week program is you can get a lot of mentorship experience. It is really good if you're looking for that like morale boost, if you're looking for that experience for your developers that is a shorter period of time, so it doesn't feel to them like, oh gosh, I'm going to have to commit all this time for this long. So it does give you that sense and can help with that side of things, the inspiration and the retention for your senior devs and your mid-level devs. The thing that a 4-week won't do is if your goal is to build a feature, 4 weeks is not enough time to do that. So if that's one of your goals, then I think that's when we move into more of a 12-week model. Like a 12-week model does give you more time to build that feature. It also gives you the benefit of all those other things, that you get the mentorship with your team, that you are creating that pipeline. And so those are the most common models that we've worked with, is the 4-week for that like jump start of your dev team to kind of get their feet wet and just get them started on things. Yeah.
Could be like a full week for us.
Yeah, kind of. So, well, for a bug fix, probably.
Stuff in 4 weeks, but you're not going to implement huge
Right.
changes.
Right, and that's where, again, going back to those SMART goals and really thinking about if your goal is to build a specific feature, map out those weeks and see if you're going to end up having time to like get to where you think it's going to go, and then multiply that time by like 4, because everything's going to take way longer than you think it is.
And it might not be critical business, customer facing, right?
Yep.
It probably should not be.
Right, right, right. And Sarah's going to talk, I think all of us will talk about this at some point, but that time pressure is really hard on interns. And so if the more we can do to kind of eliminate that, the better experience it is for them. So when it comes to like a longer internship after 12 weeks, at that point you're talking more about an apprenticeship. So longer than 12 weeks is an apprenticeship. We'll also talk about, later Adam will talk about the residency program, which is something that we've built, modeled after the medical residency. That's a 12-month program. But when you're talking about an internship, usually we want to stick to the shorter periods of time, that is the condensed 4 weeks or a 12-week model. Now, the other thing that I want to jump into is who is managing the interns? Do you guys have any idea of like who would be managing the interns in your organizations? Yeah. You. Yeah.
Me. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Same. So one of the things that we've noticed, one, I said this earlier, but if your internship is taking all of your time, then something is broken, and we should figure out how to align your goals and expectations with the interns so that they can move through those processes. But the other thing that this means a lot to me is that the best mentorship is with somebody who is only a step or two ahead of you. And so making sure that those interns have that connection with a maybe mid-level person, that is a wonderful experience for the intern. It is a wonderful experience for that mid-level person because all of a sudden they're getting management experience, they're understanding how to break down their tasks into something even more simple. They then can also, more importantly, remember what it is like to not know anything. And that is where the interns are going to live, and it's so important to have that connection because otherwise they will get overwhelmed. They will see our senior dev and go, I am never going to know that much. It is 10 years down the road, that feels like forever. We all know it'll go like the snap of a finger. But anyway, so yeah.
So you threw me off a little venture here.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, what's the delineation between managing and mentoring, if there is one?
Yeah, that is a good question. I think that, the way, I do think that there is a leadership component, and where the leader, tech leader or whatever is managing the program, but I think that it's important to give some of that management to some of the younger or more junior folks that are controlling the day-to-day, that is maybe helping them with the tickets and going through the tasks, that become a little bit of management and a little bit of mentorship alongside of it. Now, that doesn't say that the seniors are not involved, because they should be involved, but they shouldn't be the first go-to. They shouldn't be the person that is even assigning the tasks and things like that, because I think that takes away some of that experience for those more middle-level developers to dive in. Yeah.
I mean, that's one of the points.
Right, and it's different for them to do it for an intern versus doing it for you. Yeah. Right, that they're giving them that opportunity to be the senior person in the room, will boost their confidence and help with a lot of things you just said.
Yeah, and I was just going to add, one of the concerns that comes up around this is, but if they're working on the product, I don't want somebody with less experience defining those things, which kind of relates to that question, which is another area where that's why you carve something out that becomes more safe, more of a testing zone of sorts, not necessarily a total test, but where the implications of those actions are not as dire as where you often need somebody in. Well, we all know that Andy is, but no, but somebody with more experience. Yeah.
Something internal facing.
Yep.
Right.
Avoid big changes to the billing system.
Yeah, avoid big changes to the billing system. Definitely avoid changes to the billing system.
Yeah. And then the last part of the logistics part that I didn't actually put a slide up here for is how many interns. Because and I will put my stake in the sand, do not ever take less than 2. In fact, I would recommend taking 4. Because you need that pod. They create this pod that allows them to work with each other, inspire each other, answer each other's questions, and then they're going to you less. The companies that come to us and only take 1 intern rarely come back because they think, man, that was so much work. Of course it was so much work because they're doing all the work that the other interns could have done. So podding them up, pairing them up, especially if you're working with a boot camp, because so many of us work on pairing during the classroom, so they're used to working in that way. And so we really recommend to our companies to don't ever take less than 2. I actually think a group of 4 is a really good number.
Yeah, I wanted to say for Sarah to speak to this because we're very much intimately involved in that, having taken interns on the project and taken 4+ in certain situations, and it worked out really well for that reason, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. For me, like when I'm taking interns, as I'm sure with all of you, I still have my full-time job. Like nothing got removed, I just also have interns. And so I have to really think about how I'm gonna manage that. And I absolutely was like, I do not want, like I would prefer 4. At one time I had 6, and it was awesome. Because again, they super support each other. They feel so much more comfortable asking each other questions that they would probably never ask me. And so you get the camaraderie, you get the support that they give each other. There's a really great positive learning environment that gets cultivated. And then the questions that get surfaced are the ones that the 4 of them couldn't figure out. And that is, we're filtering out a lot of stuff at that point.
In the back.
That is a great question. So at our
state the question. Just.
Oh, I'm sorry. He was asking about whether working remote has that same environment. Our boot camp is entirely remote, but we call it live remote. So we're together on Zoom all day. We basically do a classroom, but it's virtual. And so our students have already really bonded and created that connection. And so for me, I have a Zoom room that's for my interns, and that also is awesome accountability because if they're all working together, they're not going to let someone just flake out or not show up. And so they are absolutely still creating that connection. I'll go and we give them breakout rooms, which is a feature in Zoom where you get little sub meetings. So sometimes they'll splinter off and pair. Sometimes they'll mob if it's something that's challenging. And so they just have their own little room where they hang out. And I never have to worry about if somebody's there at work, even if I'm not checking on them right at 9 o'clock.
My favorite thing about that is that we have the Zoom room where the interns hang out, and I can just go pop in and be like, what are you guys doing? What's happening in here? That's my favorite.
Yeah, so we've created that really cohesive environment remotely.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Specifically for our program, I can't speak to where you'd get interns just in general, but specifically for our program, we as the admin and staff, we sit down and figure out who's going to go to internship together, and that is absolutely one of the things we consider. Are these people going to work well together? And even if it's a set where maybe their skill or learning is a little bit mismatched, that can be great. Because again, you're creating a mentorship dynamic within your pair, and they're still going to learn together. They're still going to do the pair programming process and build each other up and still get over those easy bugs and low-hanging fruit before they come to you as a mentor.
Great. Okay, so now we've kind of covered the pre-planning, the prep for your pitch to leadership. We've gone over our goals. We went over some measurables. We went over some of the key logistics. That these are things to think about before you go into that. And next we're going to jump into preparation, which is for us, that means the sourcing. What is the project that you're working on? How do you source a good project? And then how do you take that and specifically create tickets and tasks that interns are capable of working through at that time? So I'm going to pass it to Adam to work through this part.
Okie dokie. So let's start here with sourcing, because this is, for many teams, is going to be something different than your main app, or at least it's going to be tangentially related, but probably not going to be a critical feature set. So this can be one of the big hiccups, I got to do all this work to get there. So let's look at a few really good internship options. that may seem way too small or trivial for other members of the team, but are great for interns. So the first, hands down, is updating documentation. You'd be surprised at how powerful and effective that is. Documentation, as you know, as having been an engineer myself, is never up to date enough. This is a great place for it, and even more specifically, the onboarding documentation. So that first week where you're going through onboarding, this can be a very meta practice that puts a lot of purposeful action around getting things started. So specifically, you can say, hey, as you're going through getting the app set up, where you find hiccups, let's make a note of that and possibly add to the documentation. This is also an area where a lot of us as experienced engineers forget how many assumptions we just naturally make. We forget things like, oh, I already know where the terminal lives and how to interact with it and where to go. I forget that stuff. I forget that, standard test run commands, like very common you'll see in documentation, like, and run the tests. I forget that sometimes you have to say how to run the tests. Those being examples there. So updating documentation is an incredibly good and very useful, quite useful set of time. Another one is user accessibility audits, and there's a slight delineation between something that is like, it's kind of like SEO, where we're really making it good and you kind of need to be an expert, and yeah, sometimes we actually just need to check and make sure that we didn't conflict in colors here and things along those lines. So very oftentimes things in this zone can end up kind of low hanging because it's like, well, hey, we don't actually know if anybody is suffering from this. It's not really high enough priority. We don't have an expert for it. We know kind of the things we should think about, but not. Browser and device testing, minor version upgrades. So in the Rails world, this is a great thing to do. Probably not a Rails 6 to 7, but a Rails 6.1 to 6.2. Yeah. Yeah, and actually the inverse of that is not, and I'll talk about this here in a second, like a project to avoid is anything under like 2 or 3 major versions back. So like sub Rails 5 would not be a good project for them. Low impact, high value website upgrades. So this is another area where interns benefit a ton from understanding other areas of the business. So even if they're on your dev team, they can also be in an area of your team that's focusing on like web-based tech, but it's not the things that you're putting your engineering staff on. So this might be stuff that involves some HTML or some simple CSS or things along those lines. And then the last is some data cleanup. The caveat to data cleanup is not something that requires a batch job. Okay? So we're talking about things that are very specific. We're not having them write routines that are going to process customer data, things like that. We're talking about some kind of simple, like CSV file cleanup sort of stuff. You'd be amazed at how helpful that is, even when they're not dealing in Ruby or JavaScript. Okay? Projects to avoid. Projects that have 0 existing documentation, unless that is the project, or they're starting something from 0. That would be the big caveat there. Okay? This is a new big one. This is where monoliths are awesome, is projects where you have multiple applications that have to be spun up and running simultaneously for a single feature to work. You can do it. It's just really tough. There was an internship that we ran a few years back where there were 4 apps running simultaneously, and it literally took 3 weeks just to get started. So it can be a big time suck unnecessarily. Legacy code without a domain knowledge expert. So you got an old app and you're like, I'd love to bring this to Rails 6, but nobody knows it's a Rails 3 app. Like it's probably a bad idea. Anything involving deep computer science or data science concepts. And Chelsea talked about this one, and it really is important. Anything that involves significant time pressure. So companies that are not an ideal internship partner are one where it's like, we got 3 months, right? Hopefully we'll make it to month 4. It's kind of tough because there's just naturally going to be a need for, we got to get things done in a high time pressure environments. So massive time pressure in your term deadlines. And then the last is organizations that are in flux. So, and specifically where it may change the reporting or managerial structure for them, it's just really, really tough. Okay? So here's what I want to do real quick is actually, I want you to kind of go back into your groups. I'm sorry that I didn't put these on 2 slides, but I'll go back to here, the good list. And I want you to think up what is the nature of the project. What is it doing? Where can you put attention into it in the beginning? Which of these or others, so imagine an other category down there, but what is the nature of the project? And if you have questions, we can help there too, okay? Few minutes, go ahead and work together and figure that out. For your internship, what and where will you get a good project?
What is a good project for an intern?
Yep, for the internship. Yeah, so, okay, so a good question, and let me clarify this a little bit. Every internship should have a project. So benevolence is a wonderful driver, but it only lasts about a week, okay? Right? You can't really hold a 4 to 12-week internship on the idea that I just want to help and not have a plan for what, okay? So there needs to be a project. There needs to be a thing that they're working on, and you can let benevolence be your big driver for how you stay committed and engaged, but there needs to be a thing, something somewhere that they're getting tasks assigned to, or where Sarah's talking a lot about, you can break them into groups and they can self-organize and problem solve, you'll eliminate all that option for yourself because they're going to need you all the time because the driver is to job shadow you or something along those lines. Yeah, so the project for the internship. And come up with a hypothetical if you don't know, like just play around with it, workshop it in your brain. All right. Anyone's fail whale want to? No, that's the wrong one. Which spirit support? Nope, not that one. Confusion support animal. I want to make a suggestion. Inner animal. Anybody's inner animal? What do you got? What'd you come up with? Yes.
We were looking at a couple of different avenues. One being like, again, accessibility improvements of the product.
That's a great idea where you're kind of ingraining a kind of a belief practice system early on with accessibility or something like it to have empathy towards that practice. Yeah.
Like the minor upgrades is that you're trying to foster a culture.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it really does impact the culture in really interesting and positive ways if focused on it right. And coincidental, or the other way to look at it, which is really common, is, well, do the things that we don't want to do. Well, it doesn't culturally really help support the cause, right? Like it really kind of sets this really kind of perverse, unfortunate nature dynamic, but if you can embed some projects that reinforce where you've put value as an engineering team, for sure. Anyone else? Yeah, so I was saying there was an example along those lines of an internship a few years back that we ran where it was exactly that. It was a company that handled reviews, and they had an ads report that came out of Amazon, and just the nature of it was one big CSV file that was just 2 steps too cumbersome, but it was a great thing to convert into a simple application to display it a little bit in a slightly more user-friendly way, and pointing that same thing out. It was read-only. It wasn't the highest value where if it didn't happen, it wasn't the end of the world, but it was valuable. And so it kind of re-ingrained this idea of like, I brought value to something. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so sense of contribution. Well, great. Well, let me move on if I could. Anyone else want a duck? Another duck? Anyone speaking to you? Which one do you want? Ha, ha, ha. This one? Yeah. Mallard to you. All right. I really want to give this one to you, by the way, John. I do. I'm really wanting you to have it. All right, anyway. Okay, so moving on. So let's talk specifically about getting the backlog ready. So we did talk quite a bit around the idea that you can have the teams start to do this work, and at the same time, it actually is quite valuable to seed it with a few things, or at the very least, here's a handful of principles to consider that may look different from that of your existing backlog with a more experienced team. This is some of the work that often is a little paralyzing, like, oh my gosh, I got so much work to do. You have work to do, you just probably don't have as much as you think, okay? So here are the principles of a few good stories. This can translate across the board to any skill level, I think, but especially when we're talking about early learners. The first on our list is define the boundaries, and specifically model, time box, or eliminate as options. Okay, so modeling. So it's very common to not have kind of a scope of involvement, we'll call it. So if I have a feature of do A, B, C, or D, it's a wide open palette for me as a less experienced person. So one of the most helpful things you can do is start to give an example or a model of what would this look like. So here's another feature. So as an example, take a look at this for an example on how to do it. Okay, so modeling another feature, another part of the code base, just to kind of provide a little bit of scope. The second item is to time box that thing. So if you spend more than 3 to 4 hours, as an example, on this, please reach out for help. Because I know that it probably won't take you 4 days to do it. And if it's taking you that long, it could be one of a bunch of reasons. So putting a specific time box on something and say, hey, if this takes you longer than X amount of time, please reach out for help. As far as how long, not how long it'll take you, how long it will take you times 3 or 4. Okay, so that's one. Eliminate is eliminate from the menu of options so they have a more narrow scope of what this could involve. So as an example, you won't need JavaScript for this, and you won't need a database migration. So if I feel like I should be doing that, it's a trigger for me of like, they told me I shouldn't need that, okay? So those are examples. So as you're defining the boundaries of a feature, as you're defining a feature, principle number 1 is make sure you define the boundaries of what would be acceptable for that feature. And there's 3 different tools you could use. Model something, time box that thing for support, or eliminate options so it's clear as what it could be, okay? It also works with your senior teams too, by the way. Okay, and next, and this is a really big one, avoid acronyms for what it's worth. I know, thank you. I am very genius. No, yeah. So this is a really surprisingly important one because let me give you a story. So I had been an engineer and worked with client services for over a decade. And I was talking to a client of mine, and they kept using the word IC. IC. Y'all know what IC means? Okay. I had no clue. And she kept saying we need 4 ICs and 2 PMs. And then I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I was so embarrassed to ask. It means individual contributor. Okay. I did not know that. And I've been doing this for a long time. I just never heard the term. I just never knew. So when you're working with folks where imposter syndrome is at its peak, oftentimes, this is an area where things can get a little risky. That it's like they're less prone to ask, or even more so related to acronyms is other domain-specific language. So if you're in an industry, this is super common. We have reports that are, built into acronyms. We have a da-da-da report, and we have a da-da-da, and sometimes we need a da-da-da. Some of that stuff means nothing. Okay, so there's 2 ways you can approach this. Number 1 is be hyper-aware. That's step 1. But actually step 2 is start a place where they can start to notate things that they're hearing that they're unfamiliar with. And then you can go back and they can ask questions, and it's a much more safe place for that to be able to expose those bits and pieces. Okay, so out of curiosity, I'm just curious, what are some of the acronyms that we use on a very regular basis? Any of them? PR. PR. Open your first PR, yeah. Yeah, uh-huh. Yeah, PR for the PR company. Yeah, PR, that's a great one. What else? CI, absolutely. What else? Of course. Right, yeah. Okay. Yeah. What else? DB. Uh-huh. What is it? SDJ. SDG, because I was like, what's an SDJ? I was like, I have no idea what that is. Okay, awesome. What else?
API, SDK.
There's tons of them. Absolutely, there's tons of them. And they can be real barriers, real serious barriers. So yeah, step 1 is definitely be hyper mindful and train the team to be hyper mindful. it's good to try and be mindful, period, about them, because the shorthand often is just not necessary. Actually, some of it, like API is an example, right? But others not. Okay. Now this is the next big one, and we'll do a quick bit of collective workshopping around it, which is, for the sake of lesser experienced people, avoid multi-step tickets. So I'll show you an example of this, but it's the do this, then that tickets. So I'll give you an example. Here is one that might be a little cumbersome, but is in its way kind of reasonable for a ticket of a more experienced team. So as a login experience, as a guest user, when I log in, if email and password are valid, redirect me to the dashboard. If either are invalid, display a validation error in red. I could break a couple of those things up for sure, but it could be considered a little reasonable if you're using Devise, that this could be one ticket because you know that it's going to do all of it in one fell swoop, right? Okay. So instead, we actually want to break these down for this even more so. And here's a simple recipe that I like to think about and follow. And again, it's something that can actually be helpful on most teams. And that is, what's the input? Where do I apply the input? And what is my expected output? So it's those three parts. We do talk a lot in software about inputs and outputs. It's actually this middle one that can matter a ton, which is, and where do I put it though? Because especially if you're using a framework, if you're custom to Rails or even other frameworks, you might find yourself knowing that automatically, but they might not. So in this example, where would we start to break this down? Actually, let's play a game here. How many feature stories do you think we could create out of just this one? And not more is better, more to less. How many do you think? Where there's one-ish input to one location to expect one type of output. Okay, so starting with the flow as an example, so redirecting to the dashboard could be isolated in its way. Things work out, the redirect should occur. The second might be the validation side of it, right? Probably two steps, yep. Yeah, validation one, display is another. So one of them that actually could get overlooked that we probably wouldn't consider a feature on a traditional dev team, but actually is a feature for a less experienced group, is actually the very first line. A guest user, because now we're introducing different types, so there's actually an embedded conditional somewhere in there. How you realize that might be that maybe a redirect model, I'm not sure, but that would be an example there. When I log in, probably just needs to get clarified as where that is, and then of course break it down. Now here's the thing where it can be I just don't want to spend all the time to do it. It's okay. So in this scenario, if you have this, then you can actually work with the team and say, here's some of the principles on how we break it down, now go do it, and I can help kind of check in on the work. This is where having them in pairs or groups can work out well. But breaking this down and not letting this live as the feature is a pretty important step, okay? Any questions about those sort of principles? So I'm going to go through them again, and you can watch this later. So the first is defining the boundaries, those three tools to do it. Avoiding acronyms and other domain-specific language without definition. And then the last is making sure to avoid multi-step tickets. Any questions around any of that? Yeah. Yeah, so this kind of goes into, I'll briefly hit on this a little bit, which is one of the discoveries we made talking to a bunch of CTOs around how are you defining senior and junior. There was a lot of different language, but the shared understanding was a more experienced person will have the capacity or ability to take an abstract or bigger concept and break it down into digestible chunks. Whereas a more junior person, they just don't have that ability yet. So it's much more about give me concrete steps where the boundaries of discovery are more constrained, and I'm not going to rabbit trail off because I just don't have the bank of experience to pull from to say, oh, I've seen things like that over here, and therefore it might look like this. I just don't have that. So just really making sure that that's in there is pretty important. So yeah. So yes, you're basically starting there. And then kind of the boundary towards more mid-level is actually the ability to start to do some of that work. So you just don't need to rush it early on. Yeah. Okay, so with our final minutes here, we're going to run through some of the stuff in actually running the internship. So you've done the planning, we're now in the execution phase of like your internship is running. And so Sarah, we're gonna have Sarah come up and kind of talk through how we recommend you run through an internship. So you just kind of understand the structure. A lot of it is gonna sound familiar.
All right. So this is definitely the part we're spending the least amount of time on because it's the part that everybody is more familiar with. And typically this is the part where people want to start. This is the first thing you think about when running an internship. So doing the pre-work is really important, but there are many, many ways to run an internship, and your company is going to run it differently than any other company. And even each internship experience within your company is going to be unique because your goals may change, the people involved may change. So that being said, tons of ways to do it, but there's a couple of just basic principles that are going to help you make sure that you're successful. So there's kind of 3 areas that I'm going to talk about. The onboarding phase, the day-to-day cadence of the internship, and then what happens at the end. So the onboarding phase, I mean, some of that, of course, is going to be just getting the person integrated, the interns integrated into your team, making sure that they have access to all your communication devices and project management platforms, and then spinning up the app, so doing the environment work. It is very natural to want to rush this phase and get to the coding, but don't. This is probably the first time that interns are doing any of this onboarding. And it is probably the most complicated or complex, largest application they've ever worked on. So we recommend that you take a week for this phase. Regardless of how long your internship is, take a week. And this is always going to take longer for an intern, no matter what. And it's also going to be really stressful for the intern. This is their first big thing that they're doing. So, as we kind of talked about, this is really an opportunity to ensure that your documentation is up to date. Task the interns with auditing the documentation for onboarding and the documentation for your app. This is awesome for filling in gaps, getting all of those upgrades, making sure that there's not assumptions in your documentation that the team knows that somebody from outside wouldn't. And for the interns, they are immediately adding value to the team. So you're taking that thing that's stressful and turning it into a benefit on both sides. It's also a space where you can really lay the groundwork for what the expectations are with your interns. So talk about goals. If your company has particular goals that they're looking to get out of this, share that with the interns. And then make sure that the interns are setting their goals as well, and that you're talking about those goals together. Make sure those goals are in alignment, or at the very least not directly conflicting. And integrate the intern into your team. Don't silo them as an intern. One of the best things you can do that has no effort on your part is just to get the interns in the meetings. If they can be at a meeting, let them be there, because that is going to add so much value to their experience, because they've probably never worked on a tech team before. Seeing how people talk, seeing how people ask questions, seeing technologies that you're using, awesome. So, once the interns have gotten the application up and running, even if that didn't take the full week, still take the full week and have them explore the app. Just look through files, look at file structure, run test suites. Like we talked about, explore the gem file, explore the database schema. Just let them become familiar with the structure of the app. All right, so from here on out, regardless of how long your internship is, the next phase can be pretty much the same as far as these big picture goals. You want to integrate them into the team and all of that stuff, but when you're getting into the actual coding, one of the biggest things that you can do as a mentor or whoever's managing the internship team is to set aside time to do a weekly planning. And this is a time investment on your side. So you're taking those tickets that you've broken down, or at least have an idea of how you're going to break down, and do it with the interns. Even if you didn't do the work of actually taking that complex ticket and breaking it into multiple ones, do it in real time with them. Get them involved, get them in the, asking questions and contributing to the conversation, because that's how you're going to discover if they understand what it is that you've tasked them to do. And this is absolutely where my motto is like, there is not a bad question. And this is where the acronym questions will come out. I one time we were breaking down tickets, and I said ACs. And someone was like, I don't know what that means. And I was like, oh, acceptance criteria, let's talk about it. I even had an intern one time say like, I know we do stand-up, but I don't know what that means. I was like, great, let's talk about it. Like, all of the questions get out on the table. And that is super, super empowering for them to know that they can ask whatever question and that you're not gonna judge them. And when they start asking questions, you're gonna know that they understand what it is that they're supposed to be doing. And that's the point of all of this. It's gonna take longer, but if you can leave that planning meeting with really clear expectations and that you know that the interns understand what they're doing, that's where the magic happens. Because you get to walk away and go back to doing your job. And the interns then work together and they grind because they want to be successful so badly. So they are going to just hammer at this thing. They're gonna go through that grind of learning. They're gonna struggle and test things out and do things wrong, and it's awesome, because that is like the power of the internship. And then at that point, as a mentor, you check in on them daily, you do your daily stand-up, figure out what your blocker cadence or tolerance is, whatever your schedule is. And then just another tip that I really like doing with my interns, I call it Professional Development Friday. Mid-afternoon on Friday, they're wrapping up whatever task. I say, hey, switch gears, take whatever stuff you learned this week, add it to your resume, add it to your portfolio, get on LinkedIn and connect with people that you're working with, post, comment on posts, whatever, all that stuff. And so it serves kind of a dual purpose. Like, the obvious one is that you're helping them add to their job hunt assets. And then the sneaky one that I like is that, again, without a lot of effort on your end, it actually serves as kind of like a retrospective and like a recap and reflection of the week, because they're looking back and realizing, oh, I learned all this stuff this week. Like, I get to take all these things and now apply it and like use it to build my community. Plus, nice decompression on a Friday. All right, so coming to the end of the internship. I think that there's a notion that internships and hiring are ultimately connected. And in some cases, that's true. Like, people want interns because ultimately they want to hire. But I don't like putting that as a measure of success, because first of all, your team should be empowered to take interns without the intention of hiring. You're still giving them an experience. And with hiring, there's so much that has nothing to do with the interns and with you. Like, there's just too many unknowns. Like, we've had companies have all intentions of hiring and then their main client dropped and, they laid off half their team. Like, you just can't know. So, putting hiring aside, let's talk about success. That's where your goals come in. So, looking back at what you pitched to your leadership, what goals you set for the interns, what goals they set, reflect on those, and where you met goals, that's success. And then you get to celebrate. Have the interns show off what they built. Take that, bring the whole team together. If you have a product owner who's involved, bring them in and really give the interns the stage to talk about the things they learned and the things that they built. It's a really proud moment for everybody in the room, and it's a really, really cool way to wrap up the internship. And for them, and after that, regardless if, hiring worked out or not, you can continue to support them. So doing things like making sure you're connected on LinkedIn, offering to do mock technical interviews with them, writing letters of recommendation, and helping them develop their own community and their own network is gonna set them up for success regardless. So, boom, internship achieved.
Yeah. Beer for later. Okay, good. All right, you're all welcome to join us for a beer later. She'll be putting them back. Okay. All right. So what's next to wrap this up so we can call it a great day and a great conference here very shortly? So a couple of things is we talked a lot about this. The Ruby community and we care. That's a very important thing to convey and have as a core understanding, that there's care and concern. to show that care, we have to take actions as a community to get there. None of us started knowing this when we were born. We all started from that very early place. And like I was saying again, when I looked at the 2 job boards, it was really sad to me. There was a part of me that was pissed, to be honest. I was mad. And then there was another part that was like, okay, this is what we got to fix. And so we need to help fix this. The greatest advocates are not going to be the business people at the top of the chain. It's going to be us making a choice and coming with a plan. Most of the time we never come with a plan. So that's the big takeaway is please have a plan. So here's what we want to offer to all of you and to anybody watching or listening is we want to help you establish this internship whether you use Learn or not. It's really important to us that we're here to advocate for all of the interns and all of the potential junior hires that are out there. If we can help people get hired, that's our goal. So here's what this is. This is to a scheduling link, to schedule a time, to sit down and walk through this again, fill in all the rest of the gaps, give any coaching. Obviously, it comes at no cost, none of that, but the goal here is to do that. The second thing is this last step right here. As an actual pitch for Learn, that's the big part that we will help manage more than all of the above, which is the actual recruiting part. We have 200 interns that are going to come in that are all Ruby Rails interns, all remote. They can all support that. So if you're here in the kind of North American time zones, literally anywhere along the North American chain, we can be helpful in that regard. We manage the internship with you, so we'll actually help figure out your schedule, who will do it, what are your outcomes, even help pitch it if that's what's necessary. It doesn't cost the company. If you want to do a longer internship, we do ask that it's paid for the interns, but the one that's a part of the curriculum, the 4-week plan, is one that can be at no cost in terms of you don't have to pay the interns. Love if you did, but you don't have to. And we will help this. So please schedule a time with us. This is going to take you to my calendar link, or we can just chit chat. I know that's what you're going to do, Andy, is you're just going to... You do. But please take advantage of this. Like, this is the type of action that we really want to help incept and get going, okay? So thank you. To those watching, thank you. Please click the link and schedule a time. It's going to be available for you too, all right? Thanks, y'all. Have a wonderful rest of your day.